are here for how to improve your safety training culture. My name is Amanda. I'm a community success coach here with Safety Smart. We provide tools and resources that help you create safety meetings, toolbox talks, and safety training in a little bit less time and with a little bit less effort. So if you have any questions about how you can do that, Jason will be obviously answering your questions. And let's go ahead and get started. If you have a question for Jason today, there's going to be an FAQ at the end of the session. You can ask your question about safety training, safety meetings at any time in the chat window on the right-hand side. And if you have any questions hearing or you're having any trouble making out the visuals of this webinar, just send me a chat in your message window here on the right, and we will address that. If you have questions about getting follow-up materials, we are going to be sending you all the information from this webinar afterwards. We're going to make sure that you get the recording, that you get these PowerPoint slides that Jason's going to go through, and that if you ask a question, we're going to get that answer to you and make sure that you got the full experience of how to improve your safety training culture. So with that said, we are excited to have Jason Heilpern with us today. Jason's been on the front lines of the safety industry for over 12 years as a trainer and a speaker for the National Safety Council and the Department of Defense. Jason spent a significant amount of time refining his training strategies to maintain a focus on keeping employees engaged. So without any further ado, I am going to hand it over to Jason, and we will go ahead and get this started.
Thank you, Amanda. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. Guys, I really appreciate everybody being here today. We are going to start today's webinar off with a couple questions. I've just shot you guys a question that I would like you guys to take the opportunity to just answer quickly. We're going to be talking a lot about training. We're going to talk about how you guys can get your employees engaged. And I'm just curious from your standpoint, how often you guys are holding safety meetings. Now, just looking at the numbers, it looks like we're going to be somewhere around monthly seems to be the most common or the most popular time to do training. So let me launch these numbers out to you guys so you guys can see what I'm talking about here. So we actually just did a large poll as a company where we talked to and asked safety professionals from across the industries and across different sections how often they're holding their safety meetings. And monthly seemed to be the most popular. Now, it seems to be so here as well. And I want to ask you guys one more question. How many employees do you guys train? Now, this is kind of important when it comes to improving your culture. You might do something different if you have 100 employees versus 10,000 employees. So let's take a look here really quick. Go ahead and take just a couple seconds and answer those questions. All right, not bad, guys. All right, so let me share this with you guys so you can see just what we're talking about here. All right, excellent, guys. I really appreciate that. So give me just a second. Let me pull up my presentation here so you guys can see what we're talking about today. All right. So, guys, again today, thank you for being here. We're going to be talking about how to improve your culture of safety training. Now, I have been working in this industry for 12 years, as Amanda talked about. And this is something that I have spoken on and talked to safety professionals about for years. This seems to be the #1 thing that people are always trying to figure out. How can I improve my training? How can I find better resources and better materials? How can I get my employees to not fall asleep in my training? These are the questions that I get asked all the time. So today, what I would like to do is make you guys a promise. If you guys pay attention to what I'm going to teach today, if you guys pay attention to the tricks and some of the tips that I give you, I can make you the promise that within 1 year, you guys can absolutely transform your safety program. I have seen it done. I have seen people actually change everything about their safety training, and furthermore, I've done it myself, following the exact steps that I'm going to teach you guys today on how to change your safety program within 1 year. Let me give you an example. I used to work as a corporate safety director for a large railroad company. When I started with this company, I was handed over all of their OSHA logs, all of their injury reports, and I had a company that I was responsible for up in Michigan that was averaging somewhere in the ballpark of about 50 to 60 injuries a year. And many of them were quite severe. Many of them required an enormous amount of time off of work, and there was a lot of workers' comp payouts that were being paid. My boss at the time came to me and said, this is a problem, and we need this to be fixed. So I went in and started using the very skills that I'm going to teach you guys today to train the employees up in Michigan and to start turning the culture around. And it took me just a little over a year. It actually took me about a year and 3 months. But after about a year and 3 months, the company had gone 365 days without a single recordable injury. And their entire program, their entire way of doing safety, their entire method of doing work had changed. So this can be done. I've seen it done, and I'm going to teach you guys today how to do it. The other thing that I am going to promise you today is if you guys pay attention and you follow the things that I'm going to teach you today, your employees are not only going to buy into your safety program, but they're going to become your supporters. They're going to become your advocates. They're going to buy into the safety program like you've never seen before and help you with the day-to-day operations of the safety program so that you as the safety professional don't have to do it all yourself. All right? So let's start with a story. Take a look at this picture and ask yourself, how the heck did this happen? This was a picture that I took several years ago. I had just arrived on a job site that I was going to do an inspection on in Washington State. While I was doing the inspection, I had just started. I hadn't been there maybe more than 15 minutes. And I heard a shout, I looked over, and I saw this. And believe it or not, I actually had the presence of mind to pull out my camera and grab a quick picture. But afterwards, we started to do an investigation, and everything came back to, how did this happen? How did something this severe go on? What you are seeing right there is a piece of machinery that is called a rail heater. The rail heater holds a 500-gallon propane tank on it, and the operator that you see running ever so quickly away from the rail heater had actually just fired up the machine. He had just started to work. He hadn't been using it more than about 10 minutes. Well, what ended up happening was the rail heater exploded, and the fire department got to come out and have a wonderful time hanging out with us on the railroad track. And what we found later was, and I'll show it to you here, what we found later was that one of the lead lines that fed the propane down was faulty and cracked. And that's what caused the fire. Now, we could have stopped there. We could have stopped there and said, okay, we found what caused the fire. We found what happened, but I decided I wanted to dig a little bit deeper. So we started to ask some questions, and we started to interview some of the employees. And here's what it came down to. We found out that the employee, who was very honest during the inspection, or during the investigation, had not actually inspected the machine that morning. He hadn't done it. He hadn't looked at it. We asked him later why he hadn't inspected the machine, because he had been trained on it. He had been trained on it for years. He had worked for our company as an operator for going on 10 years. He had been trained. He knew that he was supposed to do the inspection, but he didn't do it. And I asked him later, I said, listen, why didn't you do the inspection? And he said something that I thought was very telling to me. He looked me straight in the eye and he said, I didn't think it was that important. Now, think to yourselves, how many employees do you have like that? You train them every year. You go through these topics yearly because OSHA says you're supposed to go through these topics. But how many of your employees do you think actually look at all of these safety topics that they're being trained on and think to themselves, this really isn't all that important? That's kind of a big deal when your employees don't find value in what you're teaching. When your employees don't find value in the safety program. So one of the first things that I did is, in this particular situation, is I decided to use this employee as an example to the rest of the company. Now, I could have fired him. I could have gotten rid of him. I could have canned him, sent him on his way. But I decided to work with him and teach him because I knew that there were other employees that in the field, and there were other employees that worked for my company that felt the same way, that didn't feel like safety was all that important. And so I went to this employee and I started working with him, and I asked him to make safety a priority. And we decided to do something a little different. We took his incident, we took this rail heater explosion, and we decided to send this employee all over the company talking about his experience and talking about why he didn't do that inspection that morning. And he did this willingly. Like, we didn't threaten him. He did this willingly. He went out to every single crew and talked about his experience and talked about how scared he was when the thing went up in flames. He talked about how embarrassed he was that he had missed something so simple as just doing an inspection in the morning. And he went around and talked about now how much he understood the importance of doing pre-job site inspections. And he talked about it. It wasn't the safety guy going out and doing another training class. It wasn't a supervisor doing yet again another toolbox talk. It was one of their own. It was an employee talking about the value, talking about the importance of the safety program. And I am here to tell you guys, within months, and I'm talking like 2 months, we saw a turnaround in the quality of the inspections being done and the number of inspections being turned in. Now ask yourselves the question, guys, as safety professionals, are you guys doing everything? Are you doing all of the training? Are you doing all of the inspections? Are you doing everything that there is in the safety program? Or could you start bringing in employees and using their experiences, using their examples to help you promote the value of what you find safe? Somebody gets hurt. Great. Awesome. Use their experience and have them go out and talk to other employees in your company about their experience. You have somebody who has an incident or a vehicle crash. Have them go out and do the toolbox talks. Have them go out and talk to the employees. Use these guys. Use their experiences and let them be your voice. And I assure you guys, you will get more buy-in. You will get more feedback, and you will get more loyalty from employees if you use their experiences to help you than if you go out and do all of the yelling and the screaming and the training. I promise you. Now, let me ask you guys a question, all right? And this is kind of important. I have talked to safety professionals, possibly thousands of safety professionals over the last 12 years. And I am constantly asked the question, why is my program failing? Why can I not get the employees to listen to me? Why can I not get buy-in from my management? Why can I not get people to work safely? And I've heard a ton of different reasons, okay? I've heard all sorts of reasons. My employees don't care. They don't give a crap. They don't have any kind of a budget. My resources are awful. I don't have nearly enough time. That's probably one of the things that I hear all of the time. I hear, I'm busy, I'm busy, I'm busy. Well, guys, I'm going to give you guys somewhat of a hard truth here, okay? Because I hear these reasons all of the time. But I'm going to give you a hard truth. Guys, that's not why your program is failing, okay? Those are just excuses, all right? There are ways around every single one of those reasons. There are ways that you can create a solid safety program. And I'm going to tell you the number one thing that you need to create a solid safety program is passion, guys. You have to be passionate about what you do. We became safety professionals so that we could protect people. We became safety professionals so that we could keep people from being hurt. Let me tell you a story. I actually used to work in the city of Charlotte as a paramedic. And I loved it, guys. It was amazing. I really liked the job. I liked the adrenaline rush. I loved everything about the job. But after several years of doing it, I actually was approached by a gentleman named Mark. And I didn't know much about what he did. He owned his own company. And I knew that he did something in safety. That's pretty much all I knew. And he came up to me one day on a Sunday, and he approached me and said, how would you like to prevent injuries rather than fix them up after they happen? And it was the perfect time for me, and it was the perfect sales pitch, so to say, for me to change careers. And I jumped into safety, and I have had a passion for keeping people out of that ambulance ever since. And as I've talked to safety professionals, and as I have worked with safety professionals in a variety of different industries, I see them beaten down, and I see them tired, and I see them very, very busy. And I don't see this spark of passion. I don't see this spark of excitement. And I'm going to tell you guys something that could be a very hard truth here, guys, but you want your employees to buy into your safety program. You want your employees to actually work safely. You want your employees to believe that working safely is the only way to work. But guys, if you don't believe it yourself, why are your employees going to believe it? Why are your employees going to buy into it? If you walk into a classroom and go, all right, guys, today we're going to yet again be talking about HAZCOM, or fill in the blank for whatever annual refresher training you're doing, why are they going to feel like it's important? Why would they? You're walking into that classroom and you're acting bored. You're acting like you've got better things to do. You need to walk into that classroom and you need to be excited and you need to be passionate and you need to be fired up for whatever the topic is. I don't care if it's confined spaces. I don't care if it's HAZCOM. I don't care if you're talking about chemical safety, guys. You have got to walk in there smiling, happy, and excited. That is the number one thing that you can do to improve your safety program. I am telling you guys, if you don't have that excitement, if you don't have your passion, then your employees are never going to pick it up. I'm telling you that right now. Now, what does a typical safety program look like? All right, well, we've got company-written programs. No one likes company-written programs. I have never met a single safety professional that enjoys company-written programs, all right? But we've got them, and they're generally in this giant book that sits at the front desk or in the safety director's office, and safety professionals spend hours writing these plans. I recently spoke at the National Safety Council's Congress in North Carolina, and I had just over 200 people in the room, and I asked a question, and I asked everybody there, and I said, how many people spend over 4 hours a year writing written programs. And almost every single hand in the room shot up. So then I said, how many people here spend over 24 hours a year writing written programs? And I'd say about a quarter of the hands went down. So we're somewhere in the ballpark of about 125 safety professionals are spending over a day a year writing written programs. So then I jumped it up and I said, how many of you spend over a week, a year, writing written programs? Now we're down to about 75 safety professionals are spending over a week a year writing written programs. And then I said, how many of you spend 2 weeks? And we had roughly about 20. Why would you do that, guys? And I asked them the same question. Why would you spend so much time working on something that, to be frank, nobody reads? Now, this is one of the first things that I think that Bonguard and Safety Smart is fabulous at. Guys, as safety professionals, we need to learn that we can't do everything. We cannot be an expert in everything, and we cannot certainly be expected to do everything perfectly. We come back to that, I'm so busy, I don't have enough time excuse. Well, I'm going to give you a way that you can get out of it. Guys, there are companies like Bonguard, like Safety Smart, that provide and make amazing written programs and amazing resources that are templates that you can use. You can literally use the resources in Safety Smart to create a written program in a couple hours at most, guys. There is no reason that we should be spending 2 weeks a year writing written programs. There are valuable resources at your fingertips that you can use. I'm telling you guys, there is no reason to do that. Now, moving on from written programs, we've got training. We've already talked about that people do daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly training. Some people do monthly safety topics. Some people do daily toolbox talks. I once worked for a company where we did an annual safety meeting where we would shut the whole company and we'd do 3 full days of training. Guys, I have audited people's training for years, and I'm going to be frank, most of the time it's very badly done. Most of the time it's a crappy PowerPoint that is filled with lots and lots of words, and it's done at the front of a classroom, and the instructor is standing at the front acting like the teacher from Ferris Bueller. We have to do better, and I'm going to tell you how. We've got audits. Most of the time, safety audits turn out to be walking around a job site or walking around a plant looking for what's wrong. And then we have injury and incident management, and generally the injury incident management falls to who screwed up, whose fault is it? Now, I would imagine that I am hitting pretty close to home with most of you here on what a typical safety program is. All right? All right, so I've already talked about passion. Passion is the #1 thing that you need to change your safety program. Here is my tip #2. As safety professionals, guys, you have got to stop wearing so many hats. You have got to stop being the go-to man for everything. I used to joke around with a guy that I used to work for that the safety professional was just a jack of all trades. He was a safety professional. He was an exterminator. He was a data entry expert. He was a creative designer. He was a trainer and an educator. Guys, no job is like that. Look around at people that you work with. How many people are wearing thousands of different hats? Not many. Most people are hired to do a job and to do it well, and it generally requires just a few skills. As safety professionals, we end up running around like chickens with our heads cut off, and we need to figure out what we are good at and zero in on that and focus on that. We have to do that. For me, I have always been an educator and a speaker. I have always been good at training. I have always been good at talking in front of groups. That is my probably #1 skill. I have no fear when it comes to it. I am not great at other things. So those things that I am not great at, I choose to third party out or find other people to do it for me. Because why would I want to attempt to try and do something that I know I am going to be subpar at? If you are really bad at creating PowerPoints, if you are really bad at creating training resources, why would you try and do it? Shouldn't you go out and find a company or find a third party that can give you those PowerPoints, can give you those resources, can give you those materials that are created by experts, that are created by creative designers, that when you put them up are going to capture the attention and the imagination of your employees? I once worked with a guy, and I love this guy to death. He is still, to this day, remains one of my closest friends. But he was, and he will tell you this, so I can share this. His name was Tom, and he was by far the worst trainer I have ever met. And he knew it. He was awful at it. He was horrible. He hated it. And he would create these PowerPoint presentations that were just filled with words. That's all it was. No pictures, no diagrams, nothing. It was just a giant slide full of words. And he would stand up and in front of the class, and he would start to read the slide. And within 2 seconds, he would lose his entire audience. And I once looked at him and I said, Tom, why are you doing this? You're a horrible trainer. I love you, but you're a horrible trainer. Why do you continue to try and shove the square peg in the round hole? And for some reason, it clicked with him that day, and he actually decided to stop training and to start focusing on what he was good at. And what he was good at actually was writing written programs. He didn't like it. Nobody likes writing written programs, but he was very good at it. And now he has a job working for a company where he writes written programs. And he's very good at it, and he's very happy with what he does because he is focusing on the skill that he is the best at. Guys, we have to, as safety professionals, stop being the jack of all trades. Find what you are good at and focus on it, and that's the only way you're going to be passionate, guys. If you are constantly trying to do stuff that you hate, how can you be passionate about it? Find the things that you are good at and focus in on them. Now, guys, we have already talked a little bit about written programs. I want to come back to it just for a second. I understand the importance of written programs. Believe me, I do. I understand that we need to have policies and procedures in place so that we understand where to go from there. The written program is always going to be the first step in a safety program, and I get that, okay? But there is nothing saying that you can't use a company like ours to create those written programs for you, to give you the templates that you need, okay? Keep that in mind, guys, that third-partying out resources is not a bad thing. In fact, it is of a benefit to your company and your organization, because if you are getting 2 weeks a year back or even 24 hours back, imagine what you can do with that 24 hours. You can focus it on what you're good at. You can focus on training. You can focus on inspections. You can focus on being the safety professional that your company needs rather than sitting in front of a computer typing away. Just think about that for a second. Now, oftentimes, whenever I am looking at safety programs, whenever I come in and I talk to safety professionals, they're very proud of their safety program. And oftentimes, this is kind of how I feel when I look at safety programs, because I find that people are focused on the wrong things. So I want to show you how to focus on the right things. The first thing after written programs is always going to be training. We've put our written programs together. We have the policies and procedures in place. Now we have to train our employees. And I'm going to tell you that there is good training and there's bad training. Now, we've already talked about my friend Tom, who liked to put together PowerPoint presentations that were just filled with words. But this, guys, right here is a really good example of what I was talking about when I talked about his slides. This is what they would look like. Now, I want to give you guys a story of good training and bad training, okay? When I was first starting out in the safety industry, I went to the National Safety Council to get my certification, to get my training, to become an authorized instructor for the OSHA construction and the OSHA general industry. And I got in there, and I was being taught by an instructor by the name of Roy, probably one of the best trainers I have ever met in my life. And this guy was amazing. He came in, he was fired up, he was passionate, he talked to the ceiling, he used his hands, he got in people's faces and challenged their beliefs. The resources that he used was a variety of video and PowerPoint. He had handouts, he had audio talks, he had all of this great material that he was using. And I came away after a week's worth of training, and guys, I was fired up. I was excited. I was passionate about safety, and now I had seen another safety professional just as passionate as I was, and I was so excited to get out there and start teaching and training other people in OSHA general industry and OSHA construction. I was so excited. Now, fast forward years later, and about 3 years ago, I decided to go and get my OSHA Maritime Authorized Instructor. I live in Washington State, and if you didn't know, there are a lot of naval bases out here, and a lot of the contractors would need a maritime OSHA card. So I went out and got it, and I was really excited. I thought I was going to walk in, and I was going to get another great week of training with an OSHA instructor, and I was so excited. And I walked in, and we had a class of about 20 people, and the instructor came into the front of the room, and he sat down at the table in front of all of us, and he instructed us to turn to page 2 of this giant regulations book that we had, turned to the first person on the right, and asked him to start reading. And we all just kind of sat there and blinked our eyes. We were like, what's going on? And he actually got kind of upset with us because we didn't want to do it, and I kind of felt like this was a class at Harry Potter with Professor Snape, because he sat there and he was like, just turn to the page and start reading it. And so the gentleman that he was talking to, he went ahead and he started to read. And he had him read 10 full pages of regulations. And after 10 pages, it was passed to the next person who read 10 full pages of regulations. And guys, that is how I was trained for 2 weeks. 2 weeks, that's how I was trained, is we read the regulations book. There was no passion behind it. There was no excitement. In fact, to be honest, it was what I could do to stay awake. That is the kind of bad training that we want to avoid. And guys, I'm going to be honest with you, I see that kind of training a lot. Maybe not reading policies, maybe not reading written programs, but I have people come in and they say, how can I be passionate about teaching HAZCOM when I know my employees have heard this for 12 years in a row? Well, you're right. How are they going to be passionate about it if you're not passionate about it? Sometimes, guys, being a trainer, being an instructor, requires you to have excitement, maybe when you don't have some, because your job as a trainer is to impart passion and excitement to your employees. So you've got to muster it up, you've got to suck it up, you've got to get in there, and you've got to be excited about teaching HAZCOM for the 12th year in a row. And guys, find different ways to train. And I'm going to teach you guys that in just a little bit. Let me tell you probably one of my most proudest stories. This is how training should be, guys. The gentleman that you are seeing on the screen, in my entire career, this is the one thing that I have done that I am more proud of than anything else. The gentleman that you see on the screen, his name is Jamie Radmer. And I share this story with permission from him. Jamie was a foreman that worked for a railroad company that I worked for a few years ago. I was working as a corporate safety director, And when I came in, I had a sit down with the company's vice president. And that person, the vice president, basically, he was giving me a rundown of all of the foremen, and he got to Jamie, and he told me that Jamie was a lost cause. He was a hopeless case. He was, of all of the injuries that the company had, his crew had over 60% of the injuries in the company, okay? Of all of the incidents in the company, Jamie's crew had over 40% of them. Most of them were severe. He had rolled 2 trucks. He had destroyed, if I remember correctly, about 6 pieces of equipment. And the only reason they kept him around was he was a great track foreman. He built amazing railroad. But it was just kind of understood that he was a screw-up and that he was never going to amount to anything when it came to the safety program, and that it was a waste of time. So I went to Jamie one day. I thought about it for a few days after my meeting with the VP. I thought about it for a few days. I couldn't get Jamie out of my head. And I went to Jamie and I said, can I ask you something? Do you like being the screw-up? Do you like the reputation that you have? And he looked at me honestly while we were drinking coffee, and he said, no, I don't like it. I don't like this stigma that I can't do anything right. And I said, why do you work the way that you work? You know, the numbers don't lie, Jamie. You have 60% of the injuries. You have 40% of the incidents. Why do you work this way? If you don't want to be this guy, why do you work this way? And he looked at me and he said, Jason, no one has ever taken the time to teach me the right way. I'm doing things the way I have always done them because I don't know another way. And nobody has ever given me the time. And he actually got really mad, and he got really upset, and he kind of started to cry. And I said, tell you what, Jamie, I am going to give you all of my time and all of my attention. I'm going to give you everything I got. But I need you to change. I need you to find a different way to work. And so what I started to do is we found non-traditional ways of training. What we did is we started doing hands-on. We would do a classroom-based training. I'd bring him and his crew in, and we would do a classroom-based training. And I made sure that the PowerPoints that I was using were absolutely the best I could find or the best I could make. I made sure that the handouts that I gave him were absolutely amazing. And we would come in and we would do a classroom-based training at the beginning of the month. So let's say that at the beginning of the month, the month's topic was confined spaces. So I would have them come in at the first part of the week, and we would do their classroom-based training. And I used great resources. I did not use subpar resources. I used great stuff. The following week, I would show up on their job site, and I would go around and I would interview every single person with Jamie by my side. I would go through and I would interview every single person about the classroom-based training topic that we had gone over. And I would quiz them, and I would ask them questions. And I would ask them to show me how certain things were. I'd say, hey, here's a fall protection harness. Put this on. Show me how to don your harness. Or I would go over and I would say, hey, tell me about your morning inspection on this particular machine. And Jamie was there every step of the way. He watched me do this. Then the third week of the month, I would show up and I would get everybody together first part of the morning. And I would turn to Jamie and I would say, Jamie, why is confined spaces, or why is fall protection, or why is HAZCOM, or why is whatever the subject was, I would say, why is this topic important to you? Why is this important? And I would shut up and I'd let him answer. I wouldn't correct him. I'd let him answer. And then we'd go around the circle and I'd ask every single person there, why is safety, or why is this topic important to you? Why do you care? And I would listen to every single person's answer. And then the fourth week, we would come in and we would do some sort of goofy activity where, you know, we'd hang somebody up from a tree and we'd have to get them out. We'd hang, not somebody, but we'd hang some mannequin up in a tree and they'd have to do a fall protection rescue. Or we would simulate a fire and have to put it out using a fire extinguisher. We came up with something to make it hands-on. And the whole time I sat there and I worked with Jamie and I told him that I believed in him and I told him that he could be different. I dared him to be different. And I am here to tell you that when I left the company, Jamie called me a month later from the annual safety conference in front of the entire audience, in front of the entire company, and he called to thank me because he had just reached a year without injury or incident on his crew. And to this day, I actually called Jamie yesterday, and to this day, that was almost 5 years ago, and to this day, Jamie has remained injury and incident free because I took the time to train him differently, because I used quality resources, because I believed in him and I imparted some of my passion into Jamie, and then Jamie ran with it and did the rest. Guys, as safety professionals, we want stories like this. We want experiences like this. But I work with safety professionals all of the time that just don't put the effort in. Sadly, I was talking to a safety professional yesterday, and I shared with him this story. I shared with him about how valuable it is to use good resources and to train differently. And I shared with him this story about how I trained Jamie. And he said, we were on the phone, and he said, you know, Jason, that's a perfect world, but I'm just too busy to do that. I'm just too busy. I can't do that. And I'm going to be honest, guys, and I'm going to be frank. How can you be so busy that you cannot put the time and the effort into where it matters? What is more important than lowering your injury rate? What is more important than keeping people from getting hurt? Seriously. Can you think of a single activity that is more important than lowering your company's injury rate and keeping people safe? Because if there is, I'd really like to know about it, because I haven't found it yet. If you are so busy that you cannot focus on your employees and not change the way you train, then something's wrong, guys. He told me that the company had a culture of training and that he couldn't change it. I guarantee you guys, if you walk into your boss's office and you say, guys, we have been training a specific way for 3, 4, 10, 20, forever years, and we still are having injuries and we still are having incidents, and I want to try something different. I want to try something new. And it is my hope that this new way of training and that this new focus is going to lower our injuries, lower our incidences, help us have more profit in the company, less workers' comp, get us more jobs because we're able to compete competitively on bids because we have a better safety record. Most bosses, most supervisors will listen to you. But I find that most safety professionals are scared to go have that conversation. They don't want to upset the status quo. They don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to create waves. And guys, I am here to tell you, as safety professionals, it is our job to create waves. We have to create waves. Otherwise, if we don't create waves, people are going to get hurt. Plain and simple. End of story. People will get hurt. Ask yourself this question, guys. Is your training effective? Do you honestly believe that training is effective? We did, as a company, we did this entire giant survey, and it just went out to internally to our company yesterday. And we did a giant survey of thousands of safety professionals, and we asked the question, how many of you would say that your company has a strong commitment to safety? And most of the people that we polled said, yes, our company has a strong commitment to safety. Yes, we believe that. What I have found, guys, though, is that if I turn it around and I say, how many of you think that you're effective, most people say no. Most people say, my employees aren't paying attention. Most people say, my employees are bored. My employees don't really care. And I'm here to tell you guys that you can change that. One of the things that got me away from being a director and brought me over to working with Vanguard and working with Safety Smart was resources and its materials. Remember, guys, my skill, my number one passion is training and educating and speaking. That's the thing that I love to do. And I remember sitting in the offices of Vanguard and being shown Safety Smart, being shown Safety Smart's learning management system. And I remember them going through the PowerPoints and the employee handouts and the safety videos and the e-learning and everything that was inside of Safety Smart and just going, wow, this is amazing. I would have given my right arm to have had a resource like Safety Smart when I was a director. I'm not kidding you guys. I would have done anything to have had a system like this. I'll be honest, though, I just didn't know that these kinds of systems existed at the time. I just thought there was J.J. Keller. But then I saw Vanguard stuff, and I was just blown away at the quality of work. I was the kind of guy that hated computer-based training. I hated e-learning courses. And then I saw what Vanguard has to offer when it comes to e-learning courses, and I was blown away. I get asked all of the time, why are you not a director anymore? Why do you not run your own program anymore? Well, the reason is I have the ability and I have the privilege and the honor to work with safety professionals like you and help them find great resources that will absolutely transform and change everything there is about their training program. They don't have to put those PowerPoint slides up with thousands of words on it anymore. They can use PowerPoint slides that are put together by experts and by creative professionals that are going to capture the minds and the imaginations of your employees. After that, guys, it's up to you to do that training. All right, we're going to move away from training for just a second. I want to talk a little bit about tracking injuries and tracking incidents. Now, that was that other part of a standard safety program. We're always tracking injuries, we're always tracking incidents, and it generally comes down to whose fault is it, right? Well, most of the time when I run into people and I talk to them about how they track their injuries and how they track their incidents, it generally comes out to some sort of spreadsheet that looks like this. And I would imagine that all of you have a spreadsheet that looks something like this. And like I said, injuries and incident management generally turns into who screwed up? Whose fault was it? Now ask yourself the question, guys, is that true root cause analysis? Is that the real root cause? Whose fault is it? No. That's not real root cause analysis. Guys, injury and incident management is more than a spreadsheet. It is more than figuring out who's to blame. It is an opportunity. When you have an injury, when you have an incident, you have an opportunity to change something about your safety culture. I had an employee that worked for me many, many years ago that had a pretty big screw-up. He wrecked a company truck, not during working hours, but he wrecked a company truck after working hours. He was found to be highly intoxicated, and the truck that he had just wrecked was like a matter of a month old, okay? Most companies would have fired this guy on the spot. They wouldn't have even thought twice about it. I went to the VP of that region and I said, guys, we have an opportunity here. Okay, this guy screwed up, but we have an opportunity to make this guy the most loyal employee that this company has ever seen. And we went to him and we asked this employee if he would be willing to, he needed to enter, he needed to start going to AA and trying to get his drinking under control. And then we asked him if he would be willing to go around and talk to employees about his incident and talk to them in all candor and all honesty about why he did what he did. And in return, he got to keep his job. and he was willing to do it. And at first, he was very uncomfortable. As you can imagine, he was very uncomfortable going around from crew to crew to crew, talking about how he got really, really drunk at a bar, and he screwed up a truck, and he ticked off a police officer and ended up in jail. But over time, I kept asking him, why are you doing this? Why is this important? He started to realize, and he started to tell me that the reason he was doing this is he didn't want anybody else to get hurt like he had. He didn't want anybody else making the same mistake he had. And he spent over 3 months really getting behind talking to employees and talking to them about why it's important not to drink and drive, why it's important to take care of company equipment, why it's important to be loyal to your company. And all of the employees saw that we had not fired him, that we had given him this opportunity, and they got more loyal to us as a company. They got more loyal to the safety program. And one of the most amazing things happened. This employee actually ended up running my drug and alcohol policy. He sobered up. He found out that he really had a path behind making sure that people didn't do this again, and he went out and volunteered to get certified to take the drug tests so that he could go around and test people. He started doing all of the training. He started being my advocate when it came to drug and alcohol. And it was amazing. And I barely had to do anything. I just had to go to the VP, rock some waves, because let me tell you, the VP wanted to fire him on the spot. And I had to go and create some waves and say, no, guys, we have an opportunity here. We have an opportunity to train differently. We have an opportunity to bring an employee in and make them loyal to us. And it was an amazing experience, guys. And to this day, he is still working for that company, and he is still running the drug and alcohol policy. Turn injuries and turn incidents into an opportunity to change. And I got to tell you guys, I'm just going to throw this in there as just a side point. We got to get away from the Excel spreadsheet. Okay, it's old school, guys. There are programs out there. For example, Safety Smart has got an excellent injury and incident tracking management software. And not only will it track your injuries and your incidents, but you can actually pull reports from that injury and incident tracking. You can pull reports and see injury trends. You can see how many injuries you've had in a specific area or by supervisor or by crew. It's so much more versatile than an Excel spreadsheet. And besides, guys, generally when it comes to Excel spreadsheets, you as the safety professional are the only one who understands the Excel spreadsheet. Nobody else can read it. Most of the time when I go and audit safety programs and I ask safety professionals, can anybody else understand this spreadsheet? Most of the time the answer is no, and it requires lengthy explanations of that Excel spreadsheet. So again, guys, you're not a data entry expert. You shouldn't have to be a data entry expert. Go out and find employees and go out and find resources that can take care of your injury and your incident management for you. Okay? Get away from the Excel spreadsheet. All right, guys, we're wrapping things up here, but I just want to come back to, guys, creating a fabulous safety and health program is all about passion. It is all about excitement. It is all about being who you are and going out and finding out what your strengths are. Okay? What are you good at? What are you good at? And go out and be amazing in it. Okay? What makes you different? What makes you unique? Now, you guys can probably tell from my PowerPoint slides, I'm somewhat of a geek, and I like being a geek. But I find that using my love of geeky things and my passion for safety has a tendency to stand out in front of people and to stick in people's mind better than the traditional PowerPoint. People remember this stuff way more than the traditional PowerPoint of lots and lots of words. This is why I like Bongard's PowerPoints. This is why I like Bongard's presentations, is they stand out. They are different. And they are amazing tools and they are amazing resources, just like you all are great safety professionals. You wouldn't be here if you weren't a good safety professional. Good safety professionals show up to things like this to try and get better. That's what good safety professionals do. And I appreciate all of you being here. We're going to have a question and answer period. But to wrap things up here, guys, I encourage you, and I will give you the same challenge that I have given every employee that I have ever worked with. I dare you to be different. I dare you to go out and create a phenomenal safety program, something that you can be proud of years later. Go out and create those stories that you will be telling for years to come, and work with your employees, train them differently, use resources that are available to you like Safety Smart, and I promise you guys that within a year you will have an incredibly different safety program. So thank you very much for being here. Amanda, do you want to turn this over to question and answer period? Amanda? Maybe not. Well, guys, if you have some questions, you guys can ask them in the chat menu. I'm not sure what happened to Amanda here, but if you have some questions, go ahead and ask them in the chat bar. Amanda, you there?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, Amanda.
Great, perfect. So our first question for you, Jason, how do we reach employees at remote locations without having like access to a training facility?
It's a pretty good question. When I worked for the railroad, we had, just in Washington State, we had about, if I remember, it was about 15 crews, and they were spread out all over Washington State. Now, obviously, I can't reach everybody all at the same time. So my suggestion was, or my suggestion is work with the supervisor, work with the foreman, work with somebody, even if it's just an employee. Dedicate some time, dedicate some energy to train that person to train the other employees. Communicate with that one person and then follow up with their training. Even if it's just a regular employee, say, hey, listen, this remote location, their safety is important, your safety is important to me, but I need an advocate. I need a safety advocate. I need somebody who is going to be my champion out there. And then work with them one-on-one, even if it's just having a phone call once a week. But find yourself somebody in that area that can be your champion, that can be your advocate to help you get that training conducted and can be your eyes and ears there. I'm not talking about a spy. I'm talking about an advocate. I'm talking about a partner.
Awesome. So I have another question here for you. How do you deal with language barriers?
Oh, language barriers are always a big thing. I do not speak anything besides English. I probably should learn Spanish. But the company that the very first story that I told you guys about, the company up in Michigan, was 90% Spanish, okay? 90% Spanish, and this is why nobody had ever spent time working with this company. This is why their injuries were so high. If you don't speak Spanish, I'm going to be quite frank, you need to go out and find resources that have Spanish in it. If it's another language, same thing. You need to go out and find resources that have already been translated into Spanish or into the language that you're looking for, and you need to use those resources when you train your employees. Just because they don't understand you doesn't mean, that's not an excuse to not train them. You're going to have to spend a little extra time. You're going to have to possibly find a translator. Inside of Safety Smart, for example, we have a lot of Spanish and French resources. We have those resources in there because of the fact that we know that language barriers are a big deal. But you can't just bring a bunch of, I've worked with safety professionals before that just bring their Spanish employees in with their English employees and train everybody in English. Guys, that's not training, okay? You need to find resources that are in Spanish You need to find translators that will help you communicate back and forth. And I'll be perfectly frank, if you have a high Spanish population, you might want to think about learning Spanish or learning that language. I was very lucky with the company up in Michigan. I was very lucky that I had some great foremen that spoke both Spanish and English and did some really good translations for me. I was very lucky, but if I had not had that, I was prepared to just sink myself into learning that language so that I could communicate with those employees. But just the simple act of using Spanish resources or resources in that language will go a long way with those employees to earning respect and earning buy-in and loyalty. So, you know, again, Safety Smart has got a lot of great Spanish and French resources.
All right. Well, I think that's about all the time we have today. There were a couple of other questions that got asked. We will follow up with you individually to make sure we get those answered, and we will provide all the answers in an FAQ follow-up sheet that we will be sending. Again, the slide deck, the recording of this webinar, and the FAQ that Jason just answered here, we're going to get all of that stuff to you guys via email. So look out in your inbox. We're going to try to get those together for you here in just a couple of days. So by the end of the week, look out for that.
And Amanda, for everybody on the call, I just want everybody, again, thank you for being here. It is my intention. I'd like to reach out to all of you guys individually in the coming weeks, and just talk to you a little bit more about Safety Smart so that you guys can see what a phenomenal resource this is. So I look forward to talking to all of you individually in the future.
All right. Thank you guys so much.
All right, guys.
And we will see you next time.
Guys.
Safety Smart's taking 10 minutes to load. Right.